everybody. Hope you're doing well out there. See you in a couple minutes. Happy weekend. All right, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Just as a reminder, this channel is for educational purposes only. And I just would like to give a quick hello to everybody. Hope you're doing well out there. Welcome back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. So, got a wild one for you tonight. And highly suggest listening to this one all the way through, or at least a good portion of it. Deborah had an interesting career where she was in the medical field and kind of got to see firsthand people have end-of-life care type of situations, okay? And also involved with therapy, counseling, and, well, she ends up having an NDE a little bit later on. And, well, it's just jam-packed. I don't know if any of you had a chance to read the description, but the thumbnail also kind of gives it away, too. Oh, forgot to put on the camera. Hello there. Yeah, and it's just jam-packed. Totally jam-packed. So she talks about how she was in a suspended web. And then what you really see, the revealing moment, she ends up in this void. And when she's in the void, she's just carefree, cool, everything's fine, even though, yeah, she has that later on as well. But you see that moment where she is an individual. And then everything changes, like we see constantly in these cases, as soon as she decides to throw her intention somewhere and also get wrapped into the whole situation. And she even admits herself, she's like, I was okay with not understanding how I got there. I mean, openly admits it. She even uses the term matrix. It's a wild case. So buckle up and look forward to going over this with you. Hello, Perry, Call 40, Vegan Skeptic, Faceless, and anyone else out there. Jimmy, hello, brother. All right. Oh, just as a reminder before we get started, too, the channel, I'll be doing Odyssey exclusive streams, so at least once a month over there. And we'll most likely doing something on Rumble, too. But I know probably not the end of this month, although I may sneak in one. But starting next month for sure, there will be platform exclusive streams over on Odyssey. And that won't be available on YouTube. So if you'd like to sign up for an Odyssey account or a Rumble account, you can find those available in the description tab. And it would be great to see some of you over there. So, okay, let's get rolling. Here is Deborah.
I am the mother of 4 wonderful children. I've spent all of my professional life as a registered nurse. I was raised as a Catholic and always believed in an afterlife, had faith in the immortality of the soul. I had then 2 experiences that I think were very pivotal in my own spiritual development. The first one of those experiences was I was in a horrific car accident right before I started college. I had a day off from school. It was January 1972. I was a passenger in my father's car, and the last thing I remember is sitting at a red light, waiting for the light to turn, and that was it. The very next thing I remember is really being out of my body and looking down on what looked like a horrific accident scene, and I was trying to make sense of this. And pretty quickly, I noticed my body. I recognized myself. I was in this twisted clump of metal. The door next to the passenger side where I was sitting had pretty much been almost flattened to the ground. I was thrown almost fully into the back seat. Of course, there were no airbags at that time. We didn't even really have passive restraint systems. And my father, miraculously, he had minor injuries, but he was able to get himself out of the car. And I was watching him, and he was frantically running around the car, kind of holding his head and really panicking, looking at me, trying to wake me up. But I really looked at my body and felt no fear or concern about my body. My concern was mostly for my father at that point. I wanted to do something to tell him I was okay, I was fine, and not to worry about me. He was trying to get me out of the car. Of course, he couldn't. I felt both a tremendous sense of peace wherever I was, which I didn't really understand, but also a sense of compassion for my father at that point. And right about the time that I started seeing rescue people and police come, just like that, I was back in my body.
Now, what's interesting is you hear her have this experience, and it's going to play a minor role. Well, a role. Wouldn't say minor, but a role later on, years later, when she has her near-death experience. So just remember, she's mentioning her father here.
I remember opening my eyes and feeling glass on my face, and I was aware that I was bleeding. I had multiple injuries. I was in a lot of pain. Then I heard my father's voice saying, thank God, Debbie, you're going to be okay. So that was a very quick out-of-body experience. I now know that was that. I didn't know it at the time, didn't even know what those experiences were, but I told nobody about it at all. I didn't even tell my own mother. I just knew that it did happen, and it was very, very clear to me. But I was getting ready to start nursing school in a very strong nursing program, and certainly didn't want to be seen as crazy in any way. So I kind of just kept that experience to myself.
Okay, and I mean, how common is that too? I mean, we've talked about this more times than I can count, how the way society is molded, it's set up in a way perfectly for people to not talk about these things. Granted, things have changed, especially since the internet's kind of gone full steam, and people are feeling more comfortable sharing their experiences because others are. But I mean, she's in a profession that, thinking outside the box in terms of anything spiritual just does not compute. So this is a big, big problem in how this whole system works its way into everyone's psyche and prevents open discussions about something like a near-death experience from being talked about. And if you grew up in some super religious family, or whatever the case may be, even materialistic science type background type family, well, you're going to be shut down immediately, and you're going to be called crazy, so you just don't talk about it. And I mean, how can we progress? How can we unfold this entire mess without being able to openly talk about it? Anyways, I'll keep going. I have a little bit more to say about that later.
So I completed my nursing program at Hunter Bellevue, and I came to Maryland to work as an intensive care unit nurse at Johns Hopkins. And I was working in the medical intensive care unit. By this time, this was about 1977. At the end of one very long and exhausting evening shift, we had a fairly young man. I would say he was in his 40s. He was in shock, he was not doing well, and we were trying to determine how he got his injuries. But in the process of trying to do the workup, he had a very sudden cardiac arrest. We really weren't prepared for it, we didn't expect it. I remember the team went into full resuscitation mode. We were giving groups of resuscitation drugs, oxygen, we intubated him, everything to save his life. And we worked on this man for quite a long period of time, and things were just not looking good at all. We were not able to get a rhythm back for any really length of time. And I was watching the sense of discouragement on the faces of the team members. And the chief resident looked at me and he said, you know, Deb, I don't think we're getting anywhere, and we have to kind of call for the time of death and just really let go. But when he said that, a feeling came over me. The only way I can describe it is an intuitive kind of knowing that we needed to keep going. And
Okay. Now, just like what we heard with the dad, you got to take this moment and also remember it, file it away for when we move along with her experience. So we're talking about someone in the hospital who she's taking care of. She, they want to, the staff want to give up on the guy, but she intuitively knows that, hey, let's just try it one more time. And well, you'll see how things unravel, but two key moments that are going to carry over into her NDE. I can't stress enough how important this is.
And that our efforts would be rewarded, that somehow, just keep going, you're going to get him back. And so I looked at the chief resident and I said to him, why don't we go one more round? He looked at me and he said, okay, Deb, we'll go one more round. And so we did. And we gave another round of resuscitation drugs, another round of defibrillations, everything that we could do. And after that, we got a rhythm back. And, I remember applause breaking out in the resuscitation room. We were shocked. Actually, we were all so happy. And we considered the resuscitation a success. And I was so relieved and happy in that moment that I had followed this intuitive voice, whatever it was. But we were concerned because he wasn't waking up. And so we kind of adopted a wait and see attitude and decided to just support him with a ventilator and as many medications as we could in the hope that he would regain consciousness. I wasn't on duty the next day. It was about 2 days. I returned back to the ICU and the patient had woken up. Sometime in my absence, the days I was off, I just was so thrilled for him.
Okay, and so what you're about to hear next is exactly what we continue to keep needing as far as confirmation. It's not like we need it. I mean, it's an open and shut case. NDEs are real. People who experience them are going to real, quote unquote, places and experiencing very similar things based on their belief system.
My absence, the days I was off, I just was so thrilled for him. Walked into the patient's room, and the second he saw me, before I had a chance to say anything, he leaned forward in the bed and kind of pulled his oxygen mask away from his face and said, it's you, you're the one. And I froze for a minute. What did I do? And he said, they were working on me. I was watching the entire resuscitation from right up there. And he pointed to the corner of the ICU room. He said, I was up there, I was watching the whole thing. I saw everything. I saw the lead resident with blood on his shirt, and you were conversing with him, which is actually true. He was covered in blood. He had just come from a trauma resuscitation in the emergency room, and he told me details of the resuscitation that there was no way anybody with a flat line on their EKG monitor could have known. He even told me actually how my hair was kind of falling down. I had very long hair in the 70s, and it was the end of the shift. My hair was falling down. He told me we were having trouble with his endotracheal tube, which was true. We were actually having trouble ventilating him, and we had to call anesthesia. He described, you had to call a tall man who had glasses and had a blue hat on and blue scrubs, which really was the anesthesiologist that had come to our assistant to try to replace his endotracheal tube.
So, I mean, talk about just reassurance here in a big way. And this man is going to play a big role soon,
And
or again
other
soon.
important details of his resuscitation. I was thinking, how could this person who was in a complete cardiac arrest know these things? How could he tell me these things? I was just frozen. And then he said, but it was you, and I heard you clearly say to the guy in the blue scrubs with the blood on his shirt, when he said, let's stop, let's just call it. He wanted to give up on me. And you said, let's go one more round. I remember getting the chills. This is not a terminology that an ICU patient would know. This is how we referred to rounds of resuscitation, drugs, and interventions. And he said, you know, in my day, when people said, let's go one more round, it was usually the last call at the bar. And I remember just freezing in place. And he said, thank you, nurse, for saying that. I almost lost my voice. And I remember thinking to myself, I have no idea how this happened. I just know that there's no way this patient could have known these details unless he did exactly what he said. And I remember a striking knowing inside me at that moment, saying to myself, this changes everything. But I really told nobody.
Okay, so again, she's not telling anybody. What's interesting is, remember, she had that experience when she was younger. And then kind of it's like, I mean, this whole case has life script written all over it. All over it. And you're going to see the payoff, I promise. But it's really incredible that, you know, how we can get sucked into this world, how we can get veiled. You know, you can have this formative experience, like she had an out-of-body experience. Whoa, she's younger. And then she goes through the whole process of indoctrination. And, you know, probably it's in the back of her head anyways, but, you know, she feels shameful to talk about these things. And now she's getting a little extra step of confirmation that, you know, maybe there's a lot more to things than I've been told. And that's the story of our lives, my friend.
This changes everything. But I really told nobody. Again, this was in the 70s. Here I am at Hopkins, in the mecca of medicine and science. I'm certainly not about to tell any of my colleagues what happened with this patient. And I continued through my professional life at that point, both in nursing and then having completed a doctoral degree in clinical psychology. I was working at that point as a therapist in private practice. But this experience acted kind of like a magnet in my professional life. It seemed like the more I thought about it, the more patients would tell me about their experiences. And when I
Well, how about that? It was like she was a magnet for these things. This is a life script. Completely, 100%. Everything she's talked about so far, you know, with the exception of maybe a few details here and there, it lines up perfectly with the life script.
Kind of like a magnet in my professional life. It seemed like the more I thought about it, the more patients would tell me about their experiences. And when I transitioned out of critical care after many years into home care and hospice, that accelerated even more. Patients started telling me more about experiences around the time of death, anticipating their death, seeing loved ones who were visiting, coming to visit them. Sometimes they would look at me and they'd say, you know, Debbie, you don't think I'm crazy, do you? And I would always say, no, I know that you're not. I shared nothing about my own experiences, but it was beyond an interest at that point. It was a pull, a very strong pull in my own life.
I want to see that. It's everything has just been laid out for us. So how did your near-death experience happen?
I was 54 years old. I had just finished my doctoral research. It was a very rigorous program. My father, who lived with us, who I was incredibly close to for my entire life, was dying of pancreatic cancer, and I was trying to come to grips with that. I was also working as a nursing supervisor at a local hospital, and I just felt like I was pouring from an empty cup. I really was not taking very good care of myself. I felt like something was about to change, and went for my annual physical. I remember my primary care physician saying to me, Deb, everything looks normal, but you don't look so great. You need to take better care of yourself. And then shortly after that, the holidays started approaching. And I just was heavily grieving the loss of my father. My father had, by that time, he had passed. He had passed about 6 months prior to that, in June of that year. I felt lost. I felt like I had really lost my rudder in life. My father was like my lighthouse. I didn't really know how to be in the world without my father, and I wanted to be.
Okay, so again, key moment to not forget. My father was like my lighthouse. I mean, and we're talking about a 6-month period after he's passed. Key moments here.
Felt like I had really lost my rudder in life. My father was like my lighthouse. I didn't really know how to be in the world without my father, and I wanted to be near him. And so I told my husband I wanted to drive up to his grave site. And it was about a 2.5-hour drive. I do remember wanting to get home quickly. I pulled into the driveway. My husband came out and he said, "Oh, I'm so relieved that you're home okay. You look very, very tired," which I was. I don't remember ever feeling so exhausted in my life. And got into the house, and I don't remember any of this. This is recalled by my husband. He said I kind of robotically put down my purse and hung up my coat and started walking upstairs.
Robotically. I robotically put down my purse and went upstairs. I mean, this the chain of events here. Going to the grave, the doctor, of course, if you're going through grief of someone you care about and love, it takes a while to, get things back together sometimes. So it all lines up, but I mean, it's just like robotic.
Purse and hung up my coat and started walking upstairs. He also told me afterwards that something very intuitive came over him, and he kind of really got an intuitive sense that I somehow was just not all right.
Which is very, very standard for those that we care about and love. Like, you can intuitively get some sort of inner knowing. Some people like to call it a download or what have you, about a loved one who is about to be in a serious medical situation or die. Very, very common for this to happen to us.
Kind of really got an intuitive sense that I somehow was just not all right. He really insisted on staying there. He just was following his intuition. And so I got ready for bed and decided to kind of read for a while, sitting up in bed. And he described that as I was reading my book, I started to sit bolt upright all of a sudden in the bed, put my hands up to my head, and said, "Oh my God, Bob, I am so dizzy. I'm just so incredibly dizzy." With that, I instantly kind of fell over, slumped over the book, and I was not breathing. He checked for a pulse. I had no pulse. And I actually had taught him CPR using a video from the American Heart Association because my father, who lived with us, had a cardiac history. And so he quickly went into action, began CPR at the same time, called 911, and continued CPR until the rescue squad arrived. I was without a pulse at that point for at least 10 minutes. It was a witnessed arrest, which was a very good thing. But it was probably 10 or 15 minutes before the rescue squad arrived and started providing expert resuscitation and advanced life support. Of course, my husband was watching this, and it was going on, and they were giving me defibrillations, shocking me multiple times. They were not able to get me back. He kept thinking to himself, they're going to stop. This isn't working. I'm losing her. But somewhere around the 6th or 7th shock, maybe more, I'm not really sure, they got a pulse back. There were IVs running. They put me on a stretcher and told him that they were going to immediately transport me to the emergency room. I had arrested several more times or lost a viable rhythm in the ambulance. When I arrived at the hospital, more of the same was happening. And after a long period of time, the physician came out and spoke to my husband, and he said, look, things are just not going well for your wife. I don't think she's going to survive this. And if she does, I'm not quite sure she's going to survive it with neurological function intact. And at that point, he was able to see me in one of the ER bays, and I started having something called decerebrate posturing, which is something I had seen many times as a critical care nurse. And it's an abnormal body posture that the body goes into when there is really severe and often irreversible brain damage. And after some time, 2 physicians came out and said, we got her back. We've seen this posturing. This is often really not a good prognostic sign for somebody to have neurological function return after a cardiac arrest, especially one that happened at home. But there is one thing that we can try. It's a fairly new protocol, and it's called therapeutic hypothermia. And what we'll do is lower your wife's body temperature to try to protect her neurological system from damage. We really don't know if it's going to work, but we don't think we have anything to lose. And my husband agreed. He thought, well, if things are looking that bad, do it. Go ahead, try it. And with that, they began. I was brought up to the intensive care unit, unconscious, and remained in a coma. And so my NDE experience began in the middle of my cardiac arrest, my resuscitation, coma. I really can't tell you when it began. I can just tell you that the first thing I remember was being in what I would call a black void. I say void because I really didn't see any boundaries, but yet somehow I sensed that this was kind of a holding place. I knew.
Okay, so she's sensing it's a holding place. All right. Now, what I've talked about before about the void. Now, I think what the Matrix does is it provides a void-like experience to some because it is a familiarity. Okay, I think when we strip down our essence to the core, I do think we're just pure existence in the state of something like a void. Now, does that mean, I get this question constantly, well, what am I supposed to do after void? It sounds boring, this and that. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. It's just, you have to allow yourself time in your own void to figure things out. Reclaim your full essence, 100%, not 99%, not 80%, not 75%, 100%. So what I think the Matrix does is it gives us, I like to call it the continuity of familiarity. All right. So some people end up in the void. Some people end up hurling down the tunnel into the light. A few different things can happen. Some people see different colored lights. And actually in this case, I believe we see a golden light as well. And then there's a blue light, a green light. Depends on the situation, but most of the time it's the white light. So the reason why I'm saying this is because I think what the Matrix does is it sets up this void-like realm because it knows we're going to be familiar with it. Just like it knows we're going to be familiar with the light and that we're going to be attracted to it. Like bugs are to our lamps. You know, you leave a white light out at night during the summer or what have you. Flies and everything are going to be attracted to it. And I think it's kind of like this, we're familiar with it. Because we've reincarnated, who knows how many times. Now, does that mean every single one of us is reincarnated many times? I don't know. I think the case is that many of us have. Could there be some first timers, so to say? Maybe. But I think it's very easy to get caught up in the addiction of the earth realm experience. And so what the Matrix does is provide things that are familiar to us. I mean, you're going to hear her describe the love. You're going to hear it, and it's just like everyone else we hear. And so the key thing is to create our own void-like realm. We don't want to end up in the false, I hate to say false void-like realm, or the, you know, like the term false light really bugs me too, because that implies, I mean, just by the term of using false light, false white light, that implies that there is a good light, that there's something else. So you're not going to the white light, and that's a false light, but you know, who decides what's a good light and what's a bad light? The way I see it is I want nothing to do with any of these lights. I think it's all part of the illusion. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're all bad at all. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, why take a chance? You know, the term false light, I'm sorry, but it implies that there's a good light when we just don't know. Lights have been proven to be memory wipers, and all sorts of screwed up things can happen when you start, you know, tangoing with these lights. So anyways, I know I'm kind of rambling, but a lot more interesting things to come here.
And what I would call a black void. I say void because I really didn't see any boundaries, but yet somehow I sensed that this was kind of a holding place. I knew quickly that I was out of my body, and I wasn't afraid at all, actually. There was no fear. It was almost like a very soothing, soft, kind of velvety blackness is the only way I can describe it. It was comforting. And I kind of knew that I would not be here for long. And I thought, well...
So she says already, she kind of knew that she wouldn't be here for long. So expectations, intention is already starting to run. Or some sort of inner knowing.
Comforting. And I kind of knew that I would not be here for long. And
I'm sorry to stop it again, but if she knew she wouldn't be there for long, maybe that implies that she's familiar with it. Maybe she's been to this holding pen, so to say. Because she herself said it seemed like a holding pen or waiting room, whatever her term was. But, you know, intuitively, I think she's been through this before and knows it.
Comforting. And I kind of knew that I would not be here for long. And I thought, well, where am I anyway? And then the thought occurred to me that I was probably dead. And what do all good nurses do when there's something they want to investigate? They do an assessment. And so I actually quickly did the body check. I kind of felt for my arms and my legs and my body and my head. And I was like, okay, no arms, no legs, check, no head. You're definitely out of your body. And I remember being totally fascinated by that, thinking, okay, you really have died. I don't know how this happened, and I really didn't care, actually. I was feeling pretty great, and I still felt like myself. Out of my body, I was just pure awareness.
Okay. Listen to what she says here one more time.
I was feeling pretty great, and I still felt like myself. Out of my body, I was just pure awareness. I was slightly aware at that point.
I was pure awareness. Pure awareness. And this is the type of thing we're talking about, right? Our true essence. That's what we want. But as soon as the head starts, as soon as the mind starts racing, like I think it's like a big shock when we go from all this, sensory overload type experience while we're here in a different form, like the human meat suit, and then are quickly, out of it and onto our true self. The problem is the Matrix gets its little dirty claws in the action and starts to yank you out of it once you start giving it the intention that it wants, or attention, I mean. Both, actually.
That there was sort of a light body, is the only way I just could describe it, that there was some light coming from me, although it wasn't very prominent at that point. And when I felt that anticipation of what's next, as soon as that thought occurred to me, I felt my consciousness being propelled out of that black void.
Hear that? Let's just back it up one more time. Really important moment. I know I'm rewinding a lot and talking, but this is a huge case.
Could describe it, that there was some light coming from me, although it wasn't very prominent at that point. And when I felt that anticipation of what's next, as soon as that thought occurred to me, I felt my consciousness being propelled out of that black void.
So what's next? And then what was her realization before that? Oh, I realized that I was white light, a very dim white light, but nonetheless a white light. And, well, what's next? Well, ask and you shall receive type deal. You putting that out there, it's exterior to yourself, to something else, and let's just call it the Matrix. You're putting that energy out there, and the Matrix saying, hey, how you doing? You're expecting something. Well, we'll deliver.
Into what I would only describe as an amazingly beautiful night sky with bright lights and beautiful stars, colors I had never seen, vivid rays of light, and what appeared to be almost a very intricately woven spider web of light. It's the only way I can describe it. The stars, it was almost like I was looking at constellations. And
a spider web of light.
Spider web of light. It's the only way I can describe it. The stars, it was almost like I was looking at constellations. And I was a bit of a science nerd, so part of me at that point was kind of looking to see if I could actually recognize constellations, and I didn't. They were completely different formations, but none of them seemed haphazard. They all seemed purposeful.
Purposeful, perfect, the terms we hear all the time, but she is saying a web. Now, what she also mentions is that she's suspended in this web. I don't think she mentions it yet, but that's what she says. I mean, we're talking about the white light, being suspended and well, you'll hear. I don't want to jump too far.
And it was just so beautiful. Almost as if you were looking through the most powerful telescope you could ever look through. I remember feeling that I was just suspended in this web. And somehow also, I was aware that I was part of it.
See, this is where the problem comes in. She suspended in it, but also realized that she was a part of it. So what does that do? She went, in my opinion, from being an individual to now in the web and suspended and feeling a part of it. And what do experiencer after experiencer say? They say constantly that, we're all connected and we're all one and this and that. Now, that very well may be true, but me personally, I'm disassociating from all of that, okay? Because there are these glimpses, like with what we see with Deborah, where we get an amazing peek into what an individual really is. Now, they're always very brief moments, but they're always moments too before they start interacting with the Matrix. And almost always it's the white light. And if it's not the white light, then it likely leads to someone eventually being with the white light, but they're still interacting with the Matrix. So you can see the clear difference in this experience already, like where we have this brief window where she's her own individual, and then it just all falls apart as soon as she starts putting the homing beacon out there, like, hey, what's all this for?
And somehow also I was aware that I was part of it, which was really interesting. Felt separate at first, and then very quickly felt that not only was I a part of this web of light and purpose, but I was an important part of that web. And this kind of blew me away. I was amazed. I was like, wow, I'm part of this.
So this is this is feeding the ego. It really is. It's feeding. It makes people feel special, or it makes experiencers feel special, and rightfully so. It makes sense. But when you have this connectedness, or that you think you're part of this whole bigger system, we are much bigger than when we're in human form. There's no doubt about that. We're massive creator beings capable of amazing things. The problem is you don't want to get caught in these types of webs, and we've all clearly fallen for it.
I really couldn't make sense of it, but I was okay with not understanding how I got there, what this was. I just really allowed myself to kind of feel suspended.
Okay, you hear that? I mean, we're going to rewind this one a couple times because it's important.
Make sense of it, but I was okay. I really couldn't make sense of it, but I was okay.
I couldn't make sense of it, but I was okay.
With not understanding how I got there.
I was okay with not understanding how I got there. Come on. See, like it's just, we have this innate thing where we are just give ourselves away. It's so easy. It's like, it's the carrot and the stick. Hey, dangle, 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 dangle. And then boom, we just fall for it and fall for it and fall for it. We're memory wiped, fall for it, memory wiped, and it just goes on and on and on. When does it end? When do we start asking questions and actually applying solutions to reclaim our true essence at 100%?
What this was, I just really allowed myself to kind of feel suspended in that and to just be. There was no place for me to go, no place I wanted to be. I had no sense of my past or my future. In fact, there was no sense of time whatsoever.
No sense of time. We hear regularly, but no sense of past or future. But very, very sketchy inside this suspended web. Feels like what we're hearing right there is a memory wipe component too, because she doesn't remember the past or the future, which is extremely alarming. Like the last thing we want to do is end up in these situations. I'm not trying to be Mr. Fear. I'm just trying to say, that's why we don't give in to the distractions and the attachments and everything that is trying to get us to give validity to this matrix, when it's proven to be nothing but smoke and mirrors every step of the way.
Everything was happening in the now and all at once. which was a little bit mind-boggling, but I just loved it. And I became very aware that my five senses really did not apply to this place. I say I was seeing these lights and this matrix and web, but I really wasn't seeing it with my eyes. In fact, at some point, the lights were so bright and beautiful that I remember saying to myself, you know, don't look directly at them because they're so bright, they'll hurt your eyes. And when that thought occurred, something pulled me actually to look directly at them, and I did. It's almost like I was able to join with them. It's hard to kind of find the word.
See that? Listen.
Directly at them, and I did. It's almost like I was able to join with them.
It's almost like I was able to join with them. So she's being invited. Hey, come on over here. Don't be afraid. Come on, come on. Meanwhile, she's already, you know, in my opinion, way past the no point of return. I mean, that's why we cannot allow ourselves to interact with any of this stuff. I know I say it over and over and over again, but it's important to realize that all it takes is you flinging your intention towards something or consenting. And, you know, there have been steps in this experience already, but she has voluntarily gone along with those steps to lead her where she's going to go.
Hard to kind of find the words, but I looked at them and I kind of looked through them, and I got the sense that they were also looking through me into almost the deepest part of me. And
they're looking in the deepest part of her. The reason why they're looking in the deepest part of her is they're scanning her life script. I mean, it just like we've seen with the fragments and all that stuff. What it does is it's an AI. This is my opinion. Okay. I think it's like an AI computing system that analyzes our lives and sets it up in a certain way where there is a scenario in front of us with either a deceased loved one or God or Jesus or Muhammad or whoever, where it knows that, okay, if we take all the fragments from Deborah and mix them up, run them through the supercomputer and spit them out, well, if we present Deborah with these options, she's more inclined to believe us.
I could kind of also see and take in information that was kind of 360 degrees, not in a linear way that we do in the physical world. And I also felt and heard these harmonic vibrations. I would say it was like the most beautiful choir I certainly had ever heard, but not human voices. Just incredibly beautiful harmonic sounds and also dissonant sounds, but somehow they all worked together in an amazing, purposeful and beautiful way.
See, everything is beautiful. It's on purpose. It's set up. I mean, I haven't gone too deep into the music, although I have a couple of things set aside about the music in the Matrix afterlife, so to say. And it's interesting. So she's experiencing that in her own way.
An amazing, purposeful and beautiful way. And I just was reveling and soaking in the magnificence of this place and the awareness that I was somehow part of it. And at that moment of...
I mean, she's like, I'm sorry. She was like, I was somehow a part of it. I know I'm pausing a lot. I'm sorry. I knew I was somehow a part of it. Well, it's all part of the Matrix game, right? It makes you feel like that's where you belong. How many NDEers say it over and over and over again till the cows come home? They felt like they were at home, or they felt like they were with God in God's kingdom, or whatever the case may be. And then some of them get kicked out of God's kingdom, and I can't imagine going through that. But the point is it's supposed to make us feel this way on purpose, so that we don't ask questions. And it's essentially like we're being drugged. Just saying. It's got all the red flags to point towards that being the case, but in its own sick, twisted way.
The magnificence of this place and the awareness that I was somehow part of it. And at that moment of surrendering that desire to figure it out and understand it, I started to feel that I was moving at a pretty high rate of speed through this light matrix, and became aware very quickly that these light energies were all souls. Some of them I recognized, some I didn't, but I still felt I knew them. I knew I had been there before.
Boom. There we go. Talked about this in other videos. Even did one recently, I think it was a few weeks ago. I knew I had been there before. And it's making up souls. Like she's perceiving it as other souls. And I've put forth on the channel before that I think that, you know, there is obviously an AI structure that kind of runs things, but there's also true, I hate to say this, but true spirited beings at the switch. And I think what it does, this is just my opinion, I have no way of proving it, but this is just kind of a gut feeling. I think something like the light, and even to some aspects, the tunnel and parts of the void realm, where I think spirited beings, as true essence beings, are propping up the AI. They're part of the mechanics with it. So I think, again, a guess, but maybe a bunch of true essence beings need to kind of be in the mainframe, so to say. All right. And they prop it up, because what it does is if you have multiple true essence being kind of helping prop things up and emit this love bomb and process all the information that comes out of the individual who's having the experience, okay, so think about it. We're these all-powerful creator beings, but if there is a bunch of them and they're propping up this system, it's like, okay, it's just like if you were to go and play on a sports team. You know, your team is all jacked up. They've been training all year. They got the best coach, the best training facilities. You know, everyone's top notch in their sport. But then you have another team that's just a joke. You know, they don't have training facilities. They don't have a good coach. You know, most of the players suck on the team. You know, it's not balanced. It's not there. So for us to be able to kind of figure this out is going to be more difficult. And well, it's kind of like this full frontal attack on us, so that we're so mixed up and confused and under this love bomb and everything else that it makes it very hard to get out of this situation. And it makes it feel real. It makes it feel like home. And then you add to it, like, oh, like I recognize some of them, and I felt like I've been here before, and this and that. Well, why is that? Because the whole, the system knows what you've been through. It knows your past incarnations. Heck, maybe some of the beings that you've incarnated with are actually there. Personally, I don't think they are. Maybe in some cases it happens, but I think it's all smoke and mirrors, and it kind of is able to process this information and get the best possible outcome out of you based on what it presents you.
And I knew that every orb of light was unique, but yet there is absolutely no separation. They are connected to each other in a way that is just magnificent, and I'm connected to them. And so I continued moving, felt no fear at all about, well, I'm moving through this light matrix, I'm going pretty quickly, and just really was loving it, and was shown in almost kind of, the way I can describe it was in front of the lights. There were very rapid images of different events from the life of those souls, from the physical and earthly life. I had seen some of my own in what I might call a life review, but actually the focus was not really on my own, interestingly enough. The focus was on these frames, it's the only way I can describe them, of experience that were connected to the souls.
Okay, so it's, I mean, if I had to guess based on what she's saying here, yeah, she's getting maybe bits and pieces of her life review, even though she says it wasn't really like a life review. But I think she could even be getting bits and pieces of a previous lifetime. But then you can kind of go a step further and say that perhaps like she kind of mixed herself in with a shared death experience while she was having a near-death experience. Because when someone sees another's life review and it's in screens and captures and whatever the terminology is for the experiencer themselves, it indicates something along the lines of a shared death experience. So maybe she kind of crossed into both. Just throwing it out there, not saying that's exactly what's happening here.
It's the only way I can describe them, of experience that were connected to the souls. But I kept thinking, oh, it's going too fast. I can't really see. It was almost like I was watching a PowerPoint slideshow that was just going too quickly, and you want to tell the speaker, hey, slow down, I want to take notes. But I received the message that it really was not about the events. The important message was to watch how those events affected the souls. And I started focusing on the orbs of light and the souls. And
so here we have a lesson to learn.
And I started focusing on the orbs of light and the souls. And the message was given to me that nothing could harm the souls. No matter what these events were, that the soul remained immortal and intact. And I was shown a lot of things. I mean, births, deaths, and some pretty frightening images, conflict, war, people who had been traumatized in different ways. And again, I focused on watching the light, and I was told repeatedly, you see, none of these things can affect the soul.
None of these things can affect the soul. But why, if we're this, look, we hear it over and over that we are creator beings, that we have this ability. I've experienced it myself in astral projection and heightened states of meditation, okay? Where you can see that your intention is king. You're able to control situations and in amazing ways that just cannot be ever described and put into justice in human form, but they can be experienced. Why does this whole thing exist? You know, if everything's about love, and that's what we hear over and over and over and over and over again till, you know, the cows come home. Say it again, you know, it's incredible, right? That we continue to hear the same narratives. Everything's about love, this and that. But meanwhile, she's, you know, experiencing this, but she's also seeing great moments, but she's seeing death and destruction and atrocities and all that. Well, you know, why can't this place be changed up a little or a lot? Why does it need this incessant need for suffering that is at the core? Remember, the human body is flawed by design to fail, to suffer. Now, does that mean that's the way it's going to be every day of your life? Absolutely not. Okay. But the point is when you strip down what the human experience is, at the core, it's suffering. It is. I'm sorry, but that's just what it is. I mean, our bodies are designed in a certain way and purposely flawed for a reason.
This is who you are. And nothing that's happened to you in your own life can really affect this, except for one thing. I thought, well, what is that? What is that one thing? And then I was shown slower images of events from both my life and from the life of the other orbs in the matrix. And the commonality of these events were all events where people had shown love or tremendous compassion to people who were suffering. They had helped somebody, smiled at somebody in a grocery store, simple events, or helped somebody through a tremendous illness, or shown compassion. And when those events were shown to me, and they were very clear that they were events of love and compassion, the lights became intensely brighter. Their vibration.
So, you know, once love kicks up a notch, what does it do? It gives the familiarity of the light. And we, I think, deep down subconsciously connect with that light because it equals love. It equals what we used to perceive as God or the creator or source or whatever the heck you want to call it.
The lights became intensely brighter. Their vibration became quicker. It's the only way I can describe it. It was kind of a vibration of energy and light that became so intensely bright. And the message that I received was, you see, this is who we are. This is who we were created to be. We are loving beings. Love and compassion is what makes us.
No, I'm sorry, it's not. That's what maybe makes us when we're in the matrix, right? Like when we're here, and like that's like the false narrative that it likes to push, right? Remember, it gives us all the suffering, but then love is at the other end of as an equalizer. And love is great. Love's the best thing going in this experience. It's can't beat it. But it's there for a reason, and we're stuck in this duality, right? Well, what happens when we break free of that duality? What happens when we say, okay, enough is enough. I want to see what the heck else is going out in the multiverse. What's going on out there? Why do I have to have such limited perception about what is? We all deserve better. We all deserve to think bigger. And that's like the key thing of what I talk about here. It's like we all deserve better. We all deserve to think bigger and outside of like this very limited perception. And that includes the astral realms. Like, do you want to keep reincarnating, or at a minimum, even if you're not reincarnating here, do you still want to be a cog in the wheel of the matrix and be under some veil? I don't. And that's why non-interference, sovereignty, and liberation is the path. It's the safest path. I can't think of anything else that's a stronger approach to this. Then it's like all bets are off. I'm standing my ground. I'm going to do whatever's right for me as an individual, and that's what everyone should do. And just see what the heck happens. That's it. But don't doubt yourself. Don't allow doubt. Don't let these bastards win. Because they want that doubt. They want you to think like, oh, well, what do I do if I do this? What if I do if I do that? Like, who says you have to answer to anything? Screw it all. Screw it all. You don't owe this system anything. You don't owe it an answer. If anything, it owes answers to you. But if you were trying to request answers from it, well, what's it going to do? It's going to deceive you. I mean, I've had these thoughts in my head like, oh, when I die, I'm gonna kick the Matrix's ass, and I'm gonna do this and take names and all that stuff. No, that's stupid. Because you know why it's stupid? It's because the Matrix will set it up that way. It's a belief system. It's an intention that I have or had at one point in my life. Like, oh, when I got out here, I'm gonna try to shut the whole thing down and kick ass and take names, and I'm all out of bubble gum and all that. But you know, you can see how even that kind of thinking can get us into trouble. And that's why we got to be careful. You know, no risk taking. That's the last thing we should ever be getting mixed up in.
This is where we came from. This is where we're going to return to.
No.
And this is really all that matters. This is really all that can impact the soul.
That's all that matters.
I remember just taking that message in and just feeling just so warmed and overwhelmed with that amount of love that
you notice how she said taking that message in. Taking that message in. So she's receiving that message. Receiving it.
Overwhelmed with that amount of love that I was witnessing and feeling. And I can only describe it as an unearthly love. It was nothing like any love I had experienced. The closest I can describe it, really, and it doesn't even come close, was really remembering when my first child was born and holding him and just locking eyes with him.
So see, this is what we've talked about on the channel before too, right? How people say that it's a love you cannot compare. Cannot compare. It just doesn't, it can't compare. And so you're hearing it from a mother right now. You know, the only comparable thing would be the birth of my first child. And she goes even further and says, and even then, it cannot be compared. If it can't be compared, that's not good. That's not good. Because what it does is, you know, based on the collective of all NDEs, what we see the light represents, and I'm just going to say it point blank, it's like we're being drugged. Like someone's, you know, slipping a Mickey in our drinks. I mean, I'm sorry, that's what it seems like. If you really don't even have a reference point while you were here to the amount of love that is being experienced over in the astral with the light, something's wrong. Like you're not going to be capable of making rational decisions. Think about the first time you fell head over heels in love with somebody and multiply that by a zillion. Whether it could be your child, your wife, your husband, whoever, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever, and multiply or no, not even multiply. Just you can't fathom what it is, and that's how this thing works. It sets it up in a way that we become impaired. We're, you know, if you got pulled over by a cop, you know, you're not going to be able to walk a steady line. You're going to jail for a DWI. Just saying.
Holding him and just locking eyes with him, feeling a love overtake me that I really had never felt for anybody before, and knowing that we would be connected forever on a spiritual level. That's the closest I can come, but it really doesn't even describe it. And it was just so wonderful. I thought, well, you know what? I really never, ever want to leave this place. I want to be here. I'm home. I know that this is where I came from, and now I'm back here, and there's nothing that's ever going to get me to leave here.
There's nothing that's ever going to get me to leave here. How many NDEers say, I'm not going back, I didn't want to go back, blah, blah, blah. Well, what do? Well, they roll out the welcome wagon, just as expected, just as we've seen over and over and over.
Here, and there's nothing that's ever going to get me to leave here. And When that thought occurred to me, I began moving again. And I kind of sensed that I was moving away from the larger matrix, and I became aware of two light energies.
Okay. So as soon as she is thinking in her head, hell, I ain't going anywhere. Matrix is like, whoa, back up the truck. Back it up to freaking Siberia. We can't have this. I mean, come on. And then, well, she sees two lights.
From the larger matrix, and I became aware of two light energies. As they came closer to me, I recognized instantly who they were. And when I say that, of course, they weren't in their physical form, in a human body. Of course, neither was I at that point, but I recognized them by their energy. And the first one that started communicating with me, you know, there was no speech, it was all telepathic. I recognized instantly as my ICU patient that
What a surprise. The ICU patient appears. Yeah, I mean, talk about scripted. It's so freaking scripted, it's not even funny.
I recognized instantly as my ICU patient that had the out-of-body experience and had returned to his body and told me about his resuscitation. And I was surprised, but I was so overjoyed to see him. And I was like, wow, it's really you.
Funny.
He was like, well, yes, of course it's me. I wouldn't be anywhere else. I'm here to give you a message. There really aren't any accidents in life.
See, there aren't any accidents in life. So she's getting confirmation of the life script. There aren't any accidents. Well, there are once your free will and self-awareness starts to come into play, because once you're fully self-aware that you're on a script, you can divert from that. But if you don't know and you're just going about your day-to-day life from cradle to grave, well, the Matrix is going to have a chokehold over you, and your life script's going to play out the way it's supposed to. Or life scripts, I should say.
To give you a message. There really aren't any accidents in life. When we had that experience when you were a young nurse, that was not an accident. One of the important missions of your life is you really need to share that. You kind of kept that experience to yourself. You didn't share it with anybody. But now you have to do that. You know, now is the time. That can help a lot of people. And I was very, very happy to hear that from him. All of a sudden, it made sense.
All of a sudden, it made sense.
To hear that from him, all of a sudden, it made sense. It didn't make any sense back in the 70s, but at this moment, in this place, it made total sense to me. I was like, wow, I'll take that assignment. Yeah, I'll do it. That's who I am. But
I'll take that assignment. That's who I am. I'll take that assignment. See, this is the Dr. Evil when he's stroking the cat, except he's stroking the ego. Stroke that ego and get everyone to believe in the deception.
That assignment, yeah, I'll do it. That's who I am. But really, pretty quickly, I also realized that if I did accept that assignment, that he was telling me I had to go back. I had to go back to Earth, and I had to go back into my body. And I did not like this awareness at all.
I did not like this awareness. Yeah, she's pretty lucid now, huh? Yeah, you got to go back to Earth. Well, yeah, she's in full awareness now. And she's like, no. I don't want anything to do with that. Just like all the other NDEers and pre-birth memories, they will say over and over, pre-birth memories will say, I didn't want to come. NDEers will say, I didn't want to come back. Over and over and over again. I'm telling you, it's in the 90 percentile range across the board with both of them. I'm talking about both types of experiencers. They did not want to come. They did not want to come back. Why do they keep saying that? Because they know this place is a freaking nut house. They know they're going to come back to a body of limited perception and suffering. But because they are giving credence to the system, because they're giving credence to the matrix in general, and are being messed with and hit with this euphoric love bomb, they don't know any different. That's why we got to cut the cycle off and say, enough is enough.
I did not like this awareness at all. And I shared it with him and I said, well, it sounds very worthy, but really kind of like, can't you give that job to somebody else? Let me kind of just pass that on. And he said, well, no, actually, you've already agreed to go back. And I was, no, not me. I don't know where you got that one from, but I certainly didn't agree. And he said, well, no, you actually agreed to go back before you even came here.
You see this? Look, this is the Matrix marketing department at its finest. We have heard incredible things from her that like this was something she was destined to do in her life script. And she is acting as a proxy for the Matrix marketing department. I'm convinced of it. There's nothing, I mean, the story speaks volumes about what is going on. It's the perfect example.
And this really confused me. I really couldn't make any sense of this. And I thought, well, I'm not sure where he's getting his information from, but I didn't agree to this. And he said, it's okay. It's okay. You agreed to it. You have a choice, but you've already made that choice. And
you've already made that choice.
He said, it's okay. It's okay. You agreed to it. You have a choice, but you've already made that choice. And as he said that to me, his light started fading. And I was aware that he started moving away and that the
roll out the papa
second light that had come into my space, who I recognized instantly as my father, was now going to speak with me. And I just was so overjoyed to see my father.
See, it's almost as if, the Matrix provided two options to her. They provide, I'm going to rewind it too, but they provided two options. You know, they have the ICU patient who she saved his life and said, you know, everything's planned, you know, you're supposed to do this. And then, well, what else do we have? We have Papa coming in, right? And those were the two experiences that we heard earlier in the stream. And it really, I know I keep repeating myself, but it's life script personified.
With me. And I just was so overjoyed to see my father. I just really cannot even put it into words. And I was like, Dad, oh my God, it's you. And he was like, well, of course it's me. Where else would I be?
Where else would I be? Where else would I be? I've been waiting for you. I know you were coming here.
Well, of course it's me. Where else would I be? And I was just so overwhelmed. And I would say I felt like I was crying, although I don't think I was, because I didn't have a body, but I was just so thankful to be with him. And I said, oh, now I don't ever want to leave. I want to stay here with you. I just don't ever want to be separated from you again. I was so close to my father in life that now that I had been reunited with him in this wonderful place of love and light, I didn't want to leave him.
Makes sense, right? You know, my heart goes out to Deborah. It's the Matrix has set it up so it's like it's a lose-lose situation. Unless, you know, she fights through it and starts asking bigger questions. And I'm sure anyone who has an experience like this does ask big questions, but they've also been, dare I say it, like tainted, right? They've been put through the ringer with their experience, and it's such a powerful, informative experience that they know no different. And it's very hard, very, very difficult to get someone to see through the deception if they've had an experience like this. Close to impossible. I've spoken with a few, but it just doesn't happen that often. And that's because they've been given this massive experience and interpret it in a certain way and think that, you know, God has a plan. Everything is destined. It's the way it's supposed to happen. And okay, here we go. Here we go. I just submit. Take me, God. Take me, Dad. Take me, ICU patient. You know, it just goes on and on and on.
He said, well, don't be silly. We can never really be separated. We never really were separated. I left my body and I died, but I never really left you. I've been with you this whole time, and I'm with you now. And once you go back, I will be with you. I'll never leave you. You can never really leave this place. It's a part of you.
You can never really leave this place. It's a part of you. Oh my God.
You go back, I will be with you. I'll never leave you. You can never really leave this place.
Ugh.
It's a part of you.
Fuck that.
Don't be afraid to go back and do this work, because you're never going to be alone.
Ugh.
We will always be with you, and I will always be with you. In truth, this place and the souls and the divine has always been with you. It's been a part of you. And I somehow accepted this. I trusted that even if I didn't understand it, if my father told me this, that he would not steer me wrong.
See, this is what I've been talking about constantly. My father wouldn't steer me wrong. Meanwhile, rewind. What did she say? I was okay with not understanding how I got here or there. I felt suspended in a web. And then all this stuff happens. Who's her go-to man her entire life? Her father, understandably so. And then fast forward to the NDE. And, well, my father wouldn't steer me wrong. I will put forth that I don't think she's dealing with her father. And even if she is, we have to go a step further, beyond the step further, and say that, well, you know, if Dad is still stuck in the Matrix, even if Dad is as advertised in this experience and that it's the real deal, it's him, Dad's still stuck in the Matrix. I seriously think unless you figure out how deep this whole thing goes and you can see it and you connect deep within inside that your intention is liberation, that, you know, the doors are open and that you're most likely going to end up coming back here. So it's a lose-lose situation. Either Dad's real and still stuck in the Matrix and you're going to go with him and give him the validity, or Dad's fake and pretending to be Dad and you're going along with it anyways because you feel it's him. See, I mean, you can't get around that. It's a lose-lose situation no matter what. So that's the problem. Like you can't, when everything that is talked about in the astral is diametrically opposed to what is actually happening here. Everything is not about love. It's just not. And then, you know, we can even say that because it happens, that people kill in the name of love. You know, not going to say I don't get it. It's still wild, but, you know, if you had a friend or family member, get injured, murdered, assaulted, whatever the case may be, your love for them may bring out the anger and hatred of another. So your driving force of love could make you do something that you wouldn't necessarily want to do. But you're doing it to protect and guard that love of the person that you care about. So, I mean, seriously, love is not all it's cracked up to be, but it's still the best thing going here.
Father told me this, that he would not steer me wrong. And I accepted this and I said, okay, Dad, if we're not going to be separated, okay, I'll go back. And I felt myself really being pulled away from that place. And pretty quickly, I was hovering over the ICU bed and I saw my body.
So see, like the Matrix went through the whole rigmarole and set her up in a way where, oh, okay, well, time to go. My dad's not going to steer me wrong. So I'm not going to stay here where I'm enjoying myself and filled with love. No, I'm going to take Dad's advice and I'm going to go back down there and I'm going to tell the world about my NDE and about my life.
Hovering over the ICU bed.
Okay, so we will get into the next installment right after this brief break. So hang in there with me. There's we've got about maybe another 35, 40 minutes of footage and commentary. So hang in there with me. Much more to come. Thank you so much. And we will see each other soon. For educational purposes only. Okay, so we're going to get back into Deborah King's near-death experience. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me over the break. So where we're headed next is she's about to land back on Earth. So let's roll.
Really being pulled away from that place, and pretty quickly I was hovering over the ICU bed and I saw my body. Well, gee, this really doesn't look good. I saw that I was hooked up to a respirator. I had multiple IV lines in, cardiac monitors. I recognized the unit. I had worked there as a nurse, and I knew what those pieces of equipment meant. I also noticed two details. I noticed that my eyes were gently taped closed, which usually happens in patients who are comatose to avoid corneal injury. And I also noticed, I couldn't really see if I was restrained, but there were restraints on my wrist. I couldn't really see if they were tied, but I, for a minute, got very excited because...
Okay, I mean, I you know, the irony cannot escape us. She comes back and she's in restraints. I mean, come on. Sorry.
When I saw this, I thought, wow, they don't expect me to recover because I've been in a coma. That's my body. And the only time those things happen is when they don't want the patient to wake up abruptly and pull out their breathing tube or their IV lines. And so I don't have to go back in there. I was really kind of relieved. I looked at my body again, and I looked at the nurses and the doctors that were around the ICU, and I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to fit this expanded sense of self in that body anyway. That's not going to work.
And other people have said the same thing. They said, oh, my essence or my consciousness or whatever they're using for words or terminology, it cannot, my whole essence can't possibly be expressed or fit into the human meat suit. And again, that's all by design. It's to continue to veil us and keep us in the dark about who we are and what we're capable of.
I see you, and I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to fit this expanded sense of self in that body anyway. That's not going to work. There's just no way I'm getting into that little body. But as soon as I kind of had that moment of sarcasm, like, that's not happening, then I was in my body. I would say it felt like almost like a suction. And I all of a sudden felt a sense of not being able to breathe, feeling very, very confined, but somehow regained consciousness. And the next thing that I saw was my endotracheal tube, my breathing tube, kind of sitting on my chest, or kind of on my abdomen. And I thought, uh-oh, you pulled out your breathing tube. And the alarms were going off, nurses and physicians.
Uh-oh, I'm back on Earth again.
Abdomen. And I thought, uh-oh, you pulled out your breathing tube. And the alarms were going off, nurses and physicians were running towards the bed. And are you okay? Can you breathe? And I couldn't speak. And I was thinking to myself, why are you looking at me like you saw a ghost? Why are you so shocked? I'm fine. And they were asking me all kinds of questions. Can you breathe? You know, what's your name? Where are you? Typical orientation questions. But in my consciousness, I was still back there. I was still in a spirit body. I knew I was back in my physical body, but I felt the empowerment and the expansiveness that I felt when I was out of my body. And I felt fine. I wasn't fine, but I felt that. And I just couldn't speak, wouldn't answer them. They were getting more and more distraught. The intensivist stepped forward, the critical care physician, and he said, finally, he was just so exasperated, and he said, Deborah, just say something. And I thought, well, you know, if I don't try to say something, they're just going to keep bothering me. And so, you know, my throat was very sore. It was very hard to even get the words out, but I heard coming out of my mouth, well, I've had better days.
Rightfully so.
Well, I've had better days. And he kind of jumped back, almost in shock, and turned to the nurse and he said, you know, I think she's going to be okay. I thought to myself, well, of course I'm going to be okay. Everything's okay. I didn't at all feel like I had imagined where I was or hallucinated. It was very real to me in that moment. In fact, it was much realer than where I was.
Oh, see?
I knew from what I could remember of my experience that this was not good. I certainly had undergone something that was terrible, but I really didn't feel that the majority of me was back in my body, even though I knew it. I still felt more in spirit and was still wanting on some level to find that kind of magic wand that I could wave to go back there.
So, see, she doesn't feel like she's in the right spot and kind of condensed down to this human form. And, well, you know, we see this over and over and over again. It's very, very common. You know, this human meat suit, it's foreign to us. It's not normal. And then when you see how our perception is managed and taken advantage of, and then on top of it, we're limited with what we're capable of processing and conceiving along the way, while here, it explains so much. The Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap explains in detail how we're being messed with. And, excuse me, I get people say, oh, well, this says that, this says this, and, we should take, this is gospel and that's gospel. Well, experiencer testimony says it all. It says it all. And then it aligns with some spiritual belief systems too. And the reason why it aligns with spiritual belief systems in its own way is because the Matrix knows that we're going to be asking questions. Why would those things even exist? Because it's hoping that it can ensnare you and keep you here and keep us here by believing in it. But what does it do? It gives you loads and loads and loads of truth. And then what does it do? It stabs you in the back right at the finish line. Because that's what I've noticed. I mean, everyone has to kind of come up with their own approach, and everyone has their own journey. But I mean, I know mine has been long. And every time I'm trying to find out truths, it's peppered with BS and inversion. And then when you kind of come to the realization that, yes, this whole place is based on inversion. And then you realize that, oh, okay, let's go a step further and look at what's going on outside of here for the limited things that we can comprehend. And you see continued inversion. Why is that? If everything is as advertised, like we see in Deborah's case and many, many, many other NDEs, then why is it so diametrically opposed to what's happening here? It doesn't line up. And, well, what's the next assumption you can make? We're being taken for a ride. Nothing is as it claims to be. And it's just trying to get us to continue to agree with it and give it credence when it deserves nothing. It doesn't even deserve my fart. Sorry, guys. It doesn't. It doesn't deserve the fart in the wind. It just doesn't. It doesn't deserve you giving it attention. And that's all it wants. It wants you to give it validity.
Was still wanting on some level to find that kind of magic wand that I could wave to go back there. And so I didn't doubt it at all for 1 minute. It was too real.
I didn't doubt it for 1 minute. It was real.
I could wave to go back there. And so I didn't doubt it at all for 1 minute. It was too real. The only way I can describe it is kind of like what I was experiencing in that moment felt like it was in just plain black and white. And the experience I had had out of my body was really in color, Technicolor, IMAX, whatever you want to describe it. And that was real, and this did not seem real, even though I knew that this is where I was and I had to deal with it. And I was told that what had happened to me was that I had had a cardiac arrest at home and that I had had ventricular fibrillation. My long-term memory kind of kicked in, the part that was working, and I said, well, you definitely you have it wrong. People do not have ventricular fibrillation at home and live. And if they do, they certainly don't have neurological function. And mine at that point had some challenges, but this did not make sense to me. I said, oh, you got it wrong. I must have had, maybe I had an atrial arrhythmia or another kind of heart rhythm disturbance. And so my recovery was challenging. I had word finding difficulty. I had memory problems. I felt very disoriented. I still felt like my experience was not only real, but I was trying to integrate it somehow with being here and being back in the physical world, and it really wasn't working very well. I was trying to pray and meditate, and nothing in my own experience as a Catholic or as a nurse or in any of my life experience had prepared me for this. It was kind of like I had one foot there and one foot here, and I didn't know how to kind of navigate being back in the physical world.
And that's all very common, extremely common. NDEers say this type of thing constantly, where they feel they have one foot in the other world and one here. And they also typically, very high percentage, go through a deep depression, anxiety, or they're trying to make sense of why they're back here. So like kind of what I talked about very, very briefly in the beginning is how some will feel like they got kicked out of God's kingdom and all this other stuff. I mean, so many different scenarios can present themselves and make the person who's experiencing it feel guilty. And even if the guilt's not there, they're just trying to make sense of what happened to them because it felt more real there than it does here.
But over time, that started to improve. My neurological problems started to get better, and I was able to return to my work as a psychotherapist at that point in private practice. But that set up some real dilemmas for me because at times when I was working with deeply depressed patients or patients who had suicidal thoughts and were saying to me at that point in my life, I can't live in this world anymore. I believe there's an afterlife. There's a peaceful place waiting for me. I think I should just end my life. And this just set up such a dilemma for me. Of course, all my training had rightfully prepared me to preserve life under any circumstances, to help people out of depression and out of discouragement. And yet I had come from this amazing place of love and peace, and certainly did not want to disclose any of those experiences that wouldn't have been appropriate, but yet there was something that told me, but gee, if I could just tell part of this to people, perhaps somehow they would be helped. But then there was this other voice that said, well, wait a minute, if you share this with people who are feeling suicidal or depressed, they might say, okay, well, then I definitely am going to act on this. And so it was very, very confusing for me. I tried to be as authentic as I could, which was the most important thing to me as a therapist. But this is not something I knew what to do with. And so I would refer them to, at this point, the mounting near-death experience literature and some things that I thought would comfort them, and then use the tools that I had learned in my doctoral training to help people. But it became more and more confusing for me. And so I gradually decreased my caseload, started working with people who were not as fragile, not as deeply depressed, and gradually left private practice and increased my academic load, where I was a professor of nursing, and did that almost exclusively. And just made some peace with the fact that it would take me some more time to be able to understand how I could use this experience to help people and to really integrate this into the curricula of healthcare professionals, into nursing curricula, clinical psychologists, social workers, really all people in the helping professions, because really we're here to heal body, mind, and spirit. We're holistic beings. And so many healthcare professionals are feeling discouraged and are seeking the support of a spiritual perspective. They're hearing from a lot of their patients about these experiences that they had.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. What are you talking about my channel? Investigating reality and hard truths with a spiritual perspective? No, 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 no. I understand nursing and doctors definitely they need to be educated on what's going on here, or at least that there's a spiritual component at all. And depending on where you live, you may have that or you may not. But, the Western ideology is that, you're a bag of bones when you die and that's it, which doesn't help anyone.
Feeling discouraged and are seeking the support of a spiritual perspective. They're hearing from a lot of their patients about these experiences that they had during their ICU stays, and they don't have the tools with which to respond to them. What do I say to people who say, okay, well, Deb, your background is in nursing, you've been a nurse your whole life, you know this was oxygen deprivation, this was a hallucination. I understand where that skepticism comes from. I'm trained in science. I'm trained to be the ultimate skeptic. But I think for me, the answer is very simple. My patient back in the 70s was in full cardiac arrest. He had no blood pressure, no pulse. There was no perfusion to his brain, and therefore, accessing what I know of science, he was not able to have a conscious experience. His brain was not working. And in my own experience, I had no pulse, no blood pressure. I was clinically dead for probably over 20 minutes, maybe longer. I had arrested at home. It took a while for the resuscitation crew to arrive. Then I had repeated arrests. So it's pretty clear that under those circumstances, no oxygen going to the brain. We were taught, remember learning in nursing school, 4 to 6 minutes without oxygen to the brain and the brain doesn't function. There's no more brain activity. And even though I think we know now that probably that's not exactly correct, we also know that in the absence of any perfusion to the brain, really one is not capable of having a hallucination because there's no conscious activity.
Exactly. And, to those who doubt that NDEs are real, well, what about shared death experiences? I mean, I know we kind of touched on them a little earlier in the stream, but not in much of a meaningful way. It was just kind of saying that maybe she was having a mixed experience between an NDE and an SDE. Well, anyways, with shared death experiences, someone like a family member, for instance, is going through a rough time because their mother, their father, whoever their loved one is in a very bad state and they're about to die. And then as they die, they get kind of have a parallel experience with their loved one. They might go down the tunnel. A lot of times they can end up at the light and see the life review of their loved one. And, they may be in grief, but they're not under any sort of severe medical condition that is going to cause them every single time to be put under the microscope and say, oh, well, maybe you didn't have that experience. How do you know? And then you have deathbed visions and visitations, and all this stuff lines up like a glove. So for those that kind of say, oh, well, how do you know, FC, that, NDEs are an accurate representation of what happens in the afterlife? Well, shared death experiences, deathbed visions and visitations. Why do these things line up with NDEs in many ways? Why? They line up because it's the mechanics of how this realm works. It's all about sucking us in and getting us to believe in the narrative that it wants us to believe in. And some people have something like a shared death experience and see their loved one go through life review or go through the tunnel, or maybe maybe it has, I think a lot of it, actually, I think a lot of it has to do with belief systems, right? Like, so if you have a loved one who is crossing over, they just died, and you just happen to be having a correlating shared death experience with them, and it's all playing out exactly like an NDE would, well, maybe it has something to do with their foundation. Maybe it has to do with the doubts that they have within them. Maybe they're the type of individual who may stand up for themselves, and the Matrix doesn't want that. So it sends out reinforcements in the form of your loved one, like your son or your daughter or your pet or whoever. You know, I mean, the options are endless, but the point is we know it's happening to some extent, and it plays out like a textbook NDE most of the time, if they're going down the tunnel into the light and having a life review and yada yada yada. That's how we know without any doubt that these things are all specific mechanisms set in place by a matrix kind of overlord system that just is hoping that you're not going to figure it out. All it's interested in is convincing you in that moment, or convincing your loved one in that moment. And then it moves on to the next victim. And I'm sorry, I don't even like to use the term victim. I can't stand that word, but because you shouldn't be a victim. You should, stand in your power and realize who you are. And, hey, it may have taken us who knows how many lifetimes to get here, but we got here. And that's what matters most. We're in the here and now, and we see through the BS, and we're not going to stand for it.
And so before this experience, I believed in an afterlife. I believed my patients, what they were telling me. I had no choice but to believe my ICU patient, because what he reported to me was not a hallucination. He reported what the chief resident looked like, the blood on his shirt, where I was standing. There's no way, with no pulse or blood pressure, he could have told me those details. So now it's not a belief, it's a knowing. I know that this is true. And I think one of the ways that we can understand this through science is really to kind of shift the paradigm and the understanding that we have about really what the brain is. I certainly was taught in science that the brain generates consciousness, that it is the creator of consciousness, and that when the heart stops and blood perfusion stops and there's no perfusion to the brain, there's no consciousness because the brain is not working. And I think if we step out of that and embrace what I did during my experience, which is the clear awareness that the brain does not generate consciousness. The brain is really a receptacle for consciousness, an antenna of sorts that filters our conscious experience. I've read the books by Eben Alexander, who I have tremendous respect for as a former neurosurgeon. He can articulate this at a much higher level of sophistication than I have, but this is really where I think the paradigm needs to shift in science, so that we understand that consciousness is not anything we create. We are part of it, and we will return to it.
Okay, so the question is, what is now your vision of the divine and who we are?
That since this experience, I know that we are first and foremost spiritual beings, and that we have a very temporary physical experience, that we are created from spirit, we return to spirit, and for a very brief period of time, in a physical lifetime, we experience this life to really learn important lessons for the benefit of our soul.
What? No, I'm sorry, Deborah. My heart goes out to you, and I get it. We've seen it many, many times, but it's just, again, you can't learn or grow as a spirit or as a soul or whatever terminology you want to use if you're subjected to a memory wipe lifetime after lifetime. It's just not possible. And this goes to the crux of the argument, right? If we were able to come here and experience this, and you want to come and experience Earth, you're going to give up your essence, and you're going to experience it in a lifetime, and then when you die, you're going to reclaim everything, and hey, you want another run in it, go for it. But there is not going to be any memory wipe. There's not going to be any deception. There's not going to be any smoke and mirrors, any of that stuff. That would be different. Like, if we came here to experience, just to experience, and there wasn't all this parasitical stuff going on in the background that keeps us here, clings us here, makes us addicted to this experience, then it would be different. But it's not the way it is. It's just not. You can't come here lifetime after lifetime not knowing where you came from, why you were here, where you are going, if you're being subjected to a memory wipe every single lifetime that you come here. It just doesn't make sense. And nobody could ever sit here and tell me that with all the BS going on here, that is a logical conclusion, that, oh, you have to be memory wiped in order to come back. But if everything is about learning and growing spiritually, then the argument falls apart before us. And all we see is that, oh, I have a mission and I'm supposed to grow spiritually and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it's always the same thing over and over and over and over and over again until basically you can't handle it anymore. And then the next question is why does the memory wipe exist? And it can only exist for one reason. Especially, I know it's simplified when we're just talking about it here in this brief moment, but when you strip it all away and you see how everything in the astral is diametrically opposed to what's happening here, and you piece them together and you say, whoa, that doesn't make sense. How can I learn and grow and all this other stuff if I don't even know what the hell I'm supposed to be learning from? Like, if you screwed up in a past lifetime, say you were a mass murderer or whatever the case may be, you were just a bully, a jerk. I mean, how can you learn from that if you have no foundation to base it off of? And this is where everything falls apart. It's just common sense.
Learn important lessons for the benefit of our soul, and primarily to learn how to love unconditionally. I believe that probably happens to us more than once. We probably make choices to return to the physical world more than once. And so this is something that I really hold on to and live with every day. I wake up every morning and pinch myself. Even sitting here doing this interview, it's still on some level very unreal to me and a gift. It's just every moment is precious.
Every moment's precious and it's a gift. And, I'm sure the Matrix marketing department is extremely happy with how everything's gone so far. No offense, of course, but we need the system. Well, we don't need, but the system needs it to prop up itself through exterior influences.
Some level, very unreal to me and a gift. It's just every moment is precious. My children, my family, my friends have never been as precious to me. And every morning I really wake up, no matter what the challenges in my life are, with the knowing that, okay, I've been given another day of life. I've got to do my best work. I've got to be my best person. I've got to try to improve. I've got to work through my challenges. This is why I came back. This is why I'm here. And I believe that we are having a spiritual awakening, that this is happening, that science and spirituality, once seen really as different approaches to life that really could not be integrated, I really believe we're at a very exciting and important place of integrating both of those, which has tremendous implications.
Okay. Let's just be honest. Science is going out of its way not to catch up with the spiritual aspect of things. All right. And that's all part of the materialistic type of thinking, the materialistic agenda, I should say. It's to get you to not realize that you are a quote unquote spiritual being, a true essence being, and can go your own way, do your own thing, because it wants to keep us contained. So I'm sorry, it's just not catching up. And I'm sorry, and I'll go a step further. The whole thing with how information is, certain information is not allowed to be seen anymore and things like that. Like, there are forces closing in to make sure that we don't get to have the free exchange of ideas, thoughts and ideas, right? So the window that we've had is so small and so brief that, you know, anyone who thinks in any way, shape, or form that what's going on right now is a good thing and that it's going to get better has no clue what's really going on. There's a lack of connection. We can say it intuitively or logically, common sense wise, whatever term you want to use. It does not exist. It just doesn't. If the system is going to change, it's going to change because the system wants it to change, and there will always, 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 always be strings attached. Because that's how it works. That's the proven track record that we have. Like I like to say regularly that, you know, we have a historic record for what's going on. Now, regardless of what you believe authenticity is in terms of the historic narrative, that doesn't matter, because what we do see over and over and over again is the robbing of our sovereignty, the robbing of our critical thinking abilities, and the programming from cradle to grave. Doesn't matter where you grow up. Yeah, maybe you might be, you might grow up in the rainforest somewhere and be able to do your thing. But you're still, have limited perception. You're battling the elements and this and that. But society's been set up in a certain way and has been proven time and time again to be set up in such a way that we get lost. The power structure sets it up that way on purpose. And there is no proof whatsoever that Earth was a utopia in the past. I know some people like to fling it around there and suggest it, and I get it. Like, it made me feel good when I kind of thought that too, but there's no proof of it. There's zero proof. It seems that everything that's going on here has been this way, and it's by design. And it's up to the individual, us as individuals, to see through the deception and find ourselves in the process.
For healthcare professionals and for healers. After all, I'm here because of science. Western medicine at its finest saved my life, but intuition also played an extremely important role. And so I think I'm a living example of the best combination of both science and spirituality. And I believe that is now really what my life's work is about bringing that message to healthcare professionals. There's so much wonderful work about near-death experiences. And that term didn't even exist when I had the experience in the 70s. But, the pioneering work and ongoing work of Dr. Raymond Moody, the work of Dr. Bruce Grayson, and so many others like him. We have the International Association of Near-Death Studies, which produces such incredible work for the public to access this. The near-death experience.
Yeah, IANS is great, right? It is good. NDERF is great. You can find some extremely interesting experiencer cases there, but they're they're bought and sold. They are corrupted. Okay, I'm sorry. If you look at IANS conferences, or if you look at NDERF videos, or what you're going to see is a certain narrative being pushed. If you look at NDERF, if you go to an invalid webpage on NDERF, I did isolate the image at some point. I'll have to dig it up and share it with you. But if I remember correctly, it's like the one eye symbolism or the pyramid symbolism with the one eye, something like that. So if you get to 404, it's thrown it in your face. I don't know. There's other things I can say too, but I better be careful.
To access this, the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, we really have so much now to work with. None of this. We really, to access this, the Near-Death Experience Research.
Okay, so, if you look at this symbol, you have it going round and round and round and round. That's a symbol of reincarnation, in my opinion. Birth, rebirth, birth, rebirth. Or NDE rebirth, whatever the case may be. That's just my kind of symbolic take on it. Now, it can also be interpreted as SPERM, maybe. If you look at BING's, I think it's Bing's logo. They have 3 of these similar, which would be 666. Now, there's obviously an extra one added here, but if you look at Bing's logo, you'll see that it clearly is a 666. So make of it what you will. But the point is when I look at this logo, I see reincarnation. That's what I see. And then you add to it what I mentioned earlier about how if you go to a 404 and a page that's been taken down, they got the symbolism right up in front in our faces.
Foundation, we really have so much now to work with. None of this is accidental. This is happening for a reason, and I believe it's really to help humanity. And there is a lot of despair in our world, a lot of darkness, tremendous mental health crisis. If we were not careful as a matrix of light beings, if you will, and we're not aware of our ultimate responsibility, which is to have tremendous compassion and love for everybody and everything that we share this planet with, including the planet itself, that we run the very real risk of just really being overrun by that darkness. And there is light. That is the message. There is always light. We are never separated from it. It reminds me of...
There is always light. We are never separated from it. Wow. Well, I'm choosing to be separated from it. And it can go pound sand. I'm not interested in its BS anymore. Seeing if I have the 404 image for you from NDERF. If not, I will try and dig it up for one of the next few streams. I do have to stop it here because she kind of just wraps things up. But I get there's some copyrighted music, and I've been getting slammed with copyrights. I just want to let you guys know. I mean, the Wayne interviews, I can't even begin to tell you. I've had over 20 copyright claims from supposed copyright-free music the last couple weeks, and it's infuriating. Okay. And I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. Like the reason why I created backup channels on Rumble, on Odyssey, on Twitch, and D Live is because I want to make sure the channel's out there and that this information is shared. And I'm just not going to rely on everything being in one basket like we are here. So just as a reminder, the channel will be streaming at least once a month over on Odyssey starting in the month of December 2022. A stream dedicated to Odyssey, and then I'll probably be doing Rumble as well. So, but the streams will not be on YouTube. So if you'd like to join over on those platforms, you can find a invite link in the description tab. I also have 2 YouTube backup channels as well. And if you're new to the channel or maybe haven't checked, I know some people don't get notifications when the channel's live. The best thing I could suggest is to make sure that when you subscribe that you're selected to all notifications. So the bell would be selected to all, because then they have customized. And someone told me, and I don't even know if this is true, but if you select customized, it could be like you might get notifications 10% of the time throughout the year. I don't know if that's true, but if you do, like basically the channel streams on the weekends. So it'll be a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or maybe a Friday and Sunday, something like that. So you only get a couple notifications each week, unless there's one of the quick clips that comes out. And I have a Twitch where I do Truth in Gaming. If you're into gaming, do light commentary over there on Twitch, and feel free to check that out if you like. And then, like I mentioned, I have an Odyssey, a Rumble. Those links are available. And I have an Instagram and a Twitter where I usually will send out a notification about the streams an hour before, sometimes a little bit, sometimes a day before, or less than an hour, depends on what's going on. But feel free to check out those links in the description. I also wanted to give a big shout out to Jimmy. He's been putting out some good music and is a good friend of the channel, and I appreciate him very much. He works so hard while we're live and then also behind the scenes. So please check out his music over here. And then also, I would like to give a big heads up to everyone to go and check out the Vegan Skeptics ebook / website. You can get that here. If I could type it right. There you go. So yeah, check that out. And oh yeah, if you're interested in becoming a member of the channel for levels 2 and higher, I have a backlog of member streams. We've been doing it for over a year now. And then at the last Sunday of each month, we also have a members live stream. And I'd like to welcome Endred. Yeah, Endred to the Last Timers Club. Welcome, my friend. Thank you for the support of the channel. And then there's also Stream Elements and Stripe, if you'd like to send a little donation appreciation to the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. But of course, it's never expected, but always appreciated. And I think that should wrap everything up. I can't think of anything else. We will be meeting again on Sunday, so feel free to swing by if you'd like. Oh, and the last thing I'd like to mention is I do have a channel email list. I'm going to pop that up right now for you guys. And it'd be great if you can sign up for that. To date, I think this this email list has been out for about maybe 3 months now. And I haven't sent one email out. But it's kind of just a way for us to stay in touch just in case something should ever happen here. And I'll also be sending out website updates once that's live. I want to get that done before the end of the year. I really do. And I'm hoping I can. But there will be a website come hell or high water by the beginning of next year. But all right. I think that's going to be about it. I appreciate each and every one of you for hanging in there. I hope you enjoyed this NDE commentary. It's a hell of an experience. And thank you, Kayla and Vegan Skeptic, New Yoda, Bajin, Peter, Take the Red Pill, Joshua, and Conscious Soul. Good to see you, sister. Low Instinct. And anyone else out there. Calvin, good to see you, my friend. Void Walker. And Lisa. Hey, Lisa. Good to see you. Oh, you know what? There were a few questions. Let me just get to those really quickly. Forgot about that. My ears are killing me because I'm using different headphones tonight because I left my headphones when I was out the other night. So let's see. Puya asks, is there any NDer who questions their experience and finds an inconsistency? Isn't it strange that they all fall for it? I mean, just one case. Well, that's the problem, right? It all has to do with perception and intention. If in consent, if someone is lost in the sauce, as I like to say, then they're screwed. They're set up in a way where they like that's why it's so important not to go to the light, not get stuck up in a situation where you're giving the Matrix the reassurance that it wants and that you're calling out for. I mean, just like with what we saw with Deborah tonight, you know, she's in, granted, yes, it's a Matrix void, but she's asking a question. Oh, I must be dead, or whatever the line of questioning was. And then all of a sudden things start to change. And then when she's at the light and kind of interacting with the ICU patient and her father, well, she's in a situation where she's like, I'm not going back to Earth. I'm not going back there. I'm staying right here. And then, boom, everything changes. That's why we can't be involved with those situations. And I don't think any entity in their right mind would come back here and risk incarnating in a human body or even a Matrix spiritual body just to kind of spread the word about what's going on here. I mean, I think once you're out, it's important not to veer your intention towards Earth or towards anything to do with this place. Like, yeah, like, oh, yeah, you may have some memories about past incarnations and what have you, but the last thing you want to do is put your intention in the wrong place. and get sucked back in here, because that's really what it seems to boil down to: consent and intent. And yeah, I would just I think once you're out of here, like, you may be able to kind of send signals telepathically and hope that they get to those that you care about. But I mean, beyond that, I still think it's all bets are off. Like, just avoid it all. And, you know, everyone will figure this place out when they're meant to figure it out. And the worst part is that, yeah, it could be hundreds of lifetimes, could be 10, 20 lifetimes, could be thousands of lifetimes, could be who knows how many lifetimes. But that's where the rubber meets the road, my friends, right? We have to be selfish. I hate to say it, but you got to be selfish. Like, while you're here, that's when you can do the most good. You can spread the word and get everything out there the way you need to. But, you know, once you're out of here, forget it. I don't know. I mean, that's the way I look at it now. But, you know, when we cross over and are in our own realm and it's protected, this and that, like, who's to say that, oh, you can't, like, put a little hole in your realm and send out some sort of energy wave to those that you care about, and maybe they'll receive it. But I mean, if that was the case, let's be honest. Don't you think a lot of us would be out of here sooner? Don't you think, like, more people would figure out what's going on here? It seems like they have this place pretty well figured out and locked down. I hate to think that way. I really do, because nothing would please me more than to be able to shove this right up their ass and liberate, you know, the whole damn realm, or at least those that we care about. So very, very difficult to kind of say much more than that, because I don't know. I just don't know. Okay, so let's see. I want to welcome again Endred to the Last Timers Club. Thank you so much for your support, my friend. I appreciate you. Void Walker says, yeah, I have pre-birth memories. I got guilt tripped into doing this life. Thank you, Void Walker. Wow. Yeah. That's what it seems like with mostly everyone, right? It's like this guilt trip and this false feeling that, oh, you know, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. What it does is it feeds the ego. It makes us feel like we have, like, this huge purpose, even though we're, you know, you could be in the astral chilling, mind your own business, doing your own thing. But as long as you're in the matrix astral, the matrix realms, the overall matrix system, whatever form it may be, you're kind of just a sitting duck. And that's the last thing any of us should be considering. So I think that's going to be about it. It's pretty late here. It was a late start tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll see each other again real soon. Don't work too hard next week, but if you're around on Sunday, we'll probably get together again then. And thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please hit the like button on the way out if you don't mind. Helps get the channel into more feeds. And just as a reminder, the channel will be exclusively streaming on Odyssey every once in a while, starting next month. So thank you. And Rumble. Much love. Take care of yourselves.